So hello everyone and welcome to our second episode for Canadian Mental Health Windsor-Essex County's KeepConnected podcast. Today we have a very special guest with us. It's Nathalie. She is a blogger, an entrepreneur. She's a Crohn's warrior, and she also is an architectural designer here in Windsor-Essex. And we're going to be talking a little bit about some of the things she's done. One of the things I read about Nathalie, and after talking to her, she really wanted to start this blog and to reach out after, going through so many experiences herself in terms of, overcoming chronic illness, overcoming so many difficulties, and being a student, being someone who's young, and starting her own blog and being very, very successful on her blog, on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and sharing her story. And not only sharing her story, but also talking about all the things that she's gone through and all the resiliency and how mental health and physical health are connected. So welcome, Nathalie. Thank you so much for joining us today. And of course, I'm joined with Jenny Lee as well. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you for coming on. Thank you for watching. Thank you all for being here. So Nathalie, to start, just wanted to say thank you for coming, and tell me, Gutsy Feelings, that's your blog, right? That's your website. Gutsy Feelings, where did that name come from, and where did this all start for you?
Right. So thank you so much for having me.
Yay.
I'm super excited to be here. So Gutsy Feeling really is a blog about health and wellness. And I started that blog in 2018. And I started that blog because I wanted to share my journey with Crohn's disease. So I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease at the age of 11, and that was over 12 years ago now. And I started that blog because I wanted to share my story with others. And at the time, I didn't really publicly share about my journey with Crohn's disease. And I found that sharing was really helpful for me once I started doing that. And I really wanted to connect with other people. And at the time, I was going through a really difficult point with my Crohn's disease. It was right before I had surgery. In 2018, I had 10 inches of my small intestine removed. And at the time, I felt very isolated. I felt like nobody else was going through the same thing. And once I started connecting with other people on Instagram and through my blog, I really started to find other people who were going through similar experiences. And so really the main purpose of the blog and the main thing that drives me forward is to help people realize that you can still thrive and not just survive with a chronic illness, because a lot of people feel as though they're trapped once they get this chronic illness or once they get a chronic illness. And I want to share that you don't have to feel trapped and that you can still thrive.
So Nathalie,
that's amazing.
That is amazing.
And you know what?
Yeah.
What you said right at the beginning, you just brought me back to this week. I was doing lots of various webinars this week, and you said something that I will attest 100%, 1000% is what we're doing right now. KeepConnected podcast is all about individuals with lived experience. While we are able to help others, we are inadvertently helping ourselves heal. And to me, that alone is such a power. It's like a superpower, because you started to feel less alone.
Yeah, for sure.
And then you started getting that support and that back and forth. And oh my goodness, I can only imagine how many individuals that you actually helped along the way. And that to me sends goosebumps.
Absolutely. And Nathalie, I think a lot of people that have trouble, and I don't know if you had trouble at the beginning to connect with people because you said you felt isolated.
Yeah.
Is that true? Did you feel like it was hard to find people to talk to?
Yeah, and I mean, getting diagnosed so young, I was 11,
Hey,
so
that's really young.
There wasn't, so one great community asset is Crohn's and Colitis Canada, and I volunteer with Crohn's and Colitis Canada. I'm a youth coordinator, and I'm also run the social media for the Windsor chapter. But they're all over Canada. So that was something that has been really helpful for me throughout my journey, because I was able to connect with other people through that way. But really, when I was first diagnosed, there wasn't a lot going on. I didn't know any other kids, I didn't know any other people, let alone kids.
I was just going to say, let alone kids, right?
Yeah.
You're 11, you're experiencing all of this. And it's such 11... I always
Such
say
a weird
11
age.
to 13 is just kind of like oh, I don't like that part. That's like puberty, menstruation, and for female, you know, like I remember how I felt that you just your mind's doing loops half the time, not only having to deal with everything changing in our body and our brain, hormones, and then let's add on something like a chronic illness when you don't have children or kids that can relate in school.
Yeah, no, and for sure. And there really is a lot of kids who do have Crohn's and colitis. That's actually the major amount of people that are being diagnosed now is children or youth. So there is a lot, it's just I didn't know any. So it really was an isolating time, but I think throughout my life, I did meet a few more people, but it really was just that point in my life. I felt like I was experiencing symptoms that nobody else was. And even my doctors said, oh, you have very unusual symptoms, etc. And it just was so eye-opening to see all these other people who were either having similar symptoms or were going through similar things, or even like I had somebody who had surgery the same day as me and they were across the country. Same surgery, same day. But they were across the country and we connected and we talked about our journey as we would go through and we talk about progress. So it was really awesome to be able to connect with people.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So obviously the internet has helped keep you connected and things like that.
Absolutely.
Sure.
I mean, I think there's a lot of us that run our CMHA Instagram, but predominantly when I started, I remember seeing your Instagram account and it just resonated with me because there are so many individuals across, you know, the world that we all suffer in varying degrees with chronic illness, physical health issues. And do you find that it definitely exacerbates our mental health? Absolutely, 100%. So I started to hear so many words of encouragement, hope, healing, recovery, and things that I'm passionate about, which is, you know, what are those things that you do to help?
Yeah, for sure. And there's definitely a lot of things. And I kind of like to think of it as a toolkit of a bunch of things that I do to help with my mental health. When I was younger, I never really found that my mental health was overly impacted from my Crohn's disease. I definitely was more of an anxious child, but I wasn't overly impacted until I probably became more of an adult. But I have struggled with anxiety and depression in the past, especially before I had surgery. I was at a really, like I said, I was in a very difficult point in my life. So I did struggle with depression at the time, and since then I still have anxiety, not really depression anymore, but yeah, I've definitely developed a toolkit, and some of those things include meditation. So I try to go through daily meditation, journaling as well, and there's so many different kinds of journaling that I like to do. I could talk about journaling for like an hour, but journaling, like I love to do different types. There's so many different ways.
What's your favorite? What's your favorite type of journaling? Some of my favorites
are, I don't really love just free writing. Sometimes I'll do it if I really just need to get thoughts out. But really, I love to do things like self-love lists and things like that. I love things like that. Or like journal prompts. Those are really awesome. And they're just a great way to think about topics that you wouldn't necessarily normally think about. And also goal setting. I just find it really helpful, like every morning, to write out your goals.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so meditation, journaling. Some other things that I found very helpful for me, particularly with anxiety, is really learning and reading books and learning about the psyche. So I've learned a lot in the past few years about the psyche, and really just one of the biggest things that's helped me is to realize that your thoughts are not you. So disassociating yourself from your thoughts. Because I feel like a lot of times we think, oh, I thought this, so this must be true, this must be correct.
Or I felt this,
right,
and that's
or I
the
felt
truth.
this.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
1,000%. So I've really learned that to be true, and that's also something that I've been able to work with my therapist. So therapy is another great tool.
Yes.
And I think that you can benefit from therapy like anytime, even if you don't struggle with anxiety or depression. I think that everyone should probably have a therapist to, you know, bounce ideas off of and things like that.
It's really nice to get direction from someone sometimes, right?
Right, for sure.
Yeah.
And like an outside point of view too, because they're not necessarily in your life.
Yeah.
So Natalie, I'm going to ask you one thing really quickly, because I can't get it out of my brain. So you said the biggest the best thing I learned was to really allow myself to understand that my thought is fleeting. It's temporary.
Yeah.
It is not me. So the biggest thing I hear often from younger individuals, young adults, you know, is, I tried that strategy. It just doesn't work. This is never going to work. Like that doesn't work. And we were just doing a session this week about how our thoughts, our feelings, our physical, and our behavior, it's all connected. What would you tell someone when they feel discouraged that their toolbox, nothing in their toolbox is working?
Yeah, and I've definitely been there before where I felt like, why isn't this working? Or why do I still keep getting these thoughts? Or why this, why that? And I think that the main thing I would say is to continue to try different techniques. And I think that's where therapy can be really helpful too, because your therapist can help you to try a different like CBT technique, or like different ones. So yeah, I think that there's all kinds of different techniques, and truly anyone has definitely had an experience where somebody else has dealt with that before. So there's got to be a technique that'll work.
And I think you touch on a point, and you both touch on the point that there's no right one technique necessarily for everyone, that everyone needs to figure out what's best for them. And even when you mentioned journaling, people are like, oh, I journaled, but you're talking about the types of journaling, the different kind of ways you can journal.
Yeah.
And I was wondering, since being someone young and going through this, and not everyone, even if they don't have supports, or if they feel like they wish they had something, a lot of people don't churn that into something like you have, which is a blog, which is a website, which is a toolbox for other people to look at. And you put a lot of work and time and effort, and it's excellent. And what do you think brought you to that turning point? Because you said, oh, I've been there, I've struggled, I know that things haven't worked. How have you gone? What do you think has helped you go from a point where I was struggling with this to, and I know you mentioned, like, I keep thinking about a blog, I keep thinking of a blog, I want to do this, right?
Yeah.
What do you think kind of pushed you to actually doing it? Because a lot of people are afraid of failure, right? There are a lot of people, but it's not about that. It's about putting your story out there, right?
Yeah.
So what helped you do that?
I think that the main thing that really drove me, like I said, was that sense of connection. But then once I kind of got that connection, or I kept moving past that, it was really being able to help other people. So once I started to see that I could help other people by sharing my story and sharing my tips and how I live, I really wanted to continue to do so, and I wanted to branch out and show more, and not just talk about Crohn's disease, but talk about my lifestyle. And I think something you brought up that was a great point was that I was at that point of struggle. And I think what a lot of people, especially people who have a chronic illness, is they face this point in their lives where they're like, well, I can either decide to live like this or live and struggle the rest of my life, or I can choose to move past that and to change my mindset and to change my outlook on life. Because for sure, there's going to be like garbage days, absolute garbage days, and anybody will have garbage days. But it's really, you really have to focus on moving your mindset to a point of thriving, because if you don't move it to that point, you will always be looking at life through like these cloudy and these like negative points of view.
That's the difference between, I feel like, surviving and thriving, right?
Yeah.
It's
and
like, I'm not just surviving
thing.
this experience, but I'm going to try to thrive as much as possible. And no doubt, and just like any sort of recovery, there's so much work involved, and so much self-work, so much support, so you know, so many supports, so many things involved in that, right? To allow ourselves to thrive. But it comes from internal things too, like self-managing our own, and self-care. And you talk about self-care a lot, like even what you shared with us, it's like having a wellness plan or having a self-care plan is so important.
Yeah, for sure.
I would highly recommend anybody listening in or, you know, watching this podcast, please check out Gutsy Feeling. It really did. When I say this, I'm telling you this authentically, like, it resonated with me. I've been there. I've been that individual that, you know, you feel alone. You feel like nobody is experiencing what you're feeling, and having someone out there, especially someone young, right? I know a lot of individuals that struggle with a chronic illness and a mental health issue, right? Whether it's low mood, anxiety, it could be anything. But when we combine those two, you know, that's hard to not feel like you're not alone. And I really loved that because you've built a community.
Thank you.
It is pretty phenomenal.
And honestly, Natalie, your story is it sounds like it might be different from the norm, but it is the norm. So many people deal with chronic pain. So many people deal with issues, whether it's just short-term or long-term in terms of physical health or mental health, but mental health is health, physical health is health. And whether it's long-term or short-term, it's all the same. It's that secrecy and quietness that makes it really harder to deal with.
So on garbage days, because you threw that word out there. So now I'm going to start adding that to my toolbox, because we all have a toolbox, right? So on those garbage days, let's be real. What do you do on those garbage days?
So I think that we brought up the topic of self-care, and I think that there's so many different forms of self-care, and you have like your spiritual, your emotional, your physical. And so on days where I have a garbage day, the first thing I'll do is I'll first look at my to-do list. Is there something that needs to get done that day? And if it does, okay, then I'll do that. But if the rest can wait, then I will reallocate that to another day if I can. I mean, that doesn't always happen, and especially when I was in school, I couldn't just take a full day off. But I would try to limit the amount of things, because if you're not in a good headspace, or if you're not doing well, you're not going to be putting in good effort into what you're working on.
Well, it's also going to exacerbate how crappy you might be feeling.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I really loved what you said, and that's such a great tip for anyone listening, is developing self-compassion
and flexibility
and allowing yourself, goal planning. We actually made goals this week. I'll share with everyone.
I mean, we make them all the time.
We make them all the time.
We held each other accountable.
We are holding each other accountable, because as I'm, goals are so important. And I'm talking about the littlest goal, as in, today I'm going to make my bed. And if that's all I do today, that's okay. It's developing self-compassion and acknowledging today's not going to be the best day, and that's okay.
Yeah. A good strategy that I like to do too is I like to have a top 3 for the day. So I like to write out the top 3 things that I need to get done or I want to get done that day. And some days those will be actual like work things or more work bits, but sometimes it'll be actual just like I need to get up and I need to make the bed, or I need to make a healthy meal, or I need to work out. So it can be anything, but I think having like the goal of 3 in mind, it helps you to feel accomplished, because we live in a society now where if you aren't productive and if you're not doing the most, you're not doing anything. And that's how people feel, and it's awful. And I deal with that too, is I feel like I always need to be productive. I feel like I always want to be doing something. So that's a great way, I find, that it helps me to still feel like, okay, I can check this off. I can still write this down as done. But
that's beautiful. We were just talking about that this week. We were talking about things that we do within a 24-hour period that people are so hard on themselves, right? So do most people account that you wake up, you have a glass of water, you might eat breakfast, you might brush your teeth? These are all tasks that you are doing. So on days that you're not feeling good, that you might be struggling with a chronic illness, low mood, anxiety, what are you able to do? And identifying that you just need to rest.
For sure. Rest is so important.
Okay, so right before we wrap up, because we're trying to have our podcast a little short and sweet, but I was really intrigued when you let us know, I have it here, but you're super proud of this, and as you should, because this is phenomenal. You won an award for top thesis on how architectural spaces can promote healing for people with physical conditions. Oh my goodness, that's like a heart for me. Like, that's phenomenal. So what does that mean in less than 2 minutes?
Sure. So
no pressure, right?
Yeah. So just to back up a little, but I did my Master's of Architecture. I did a Bachelor's of Architecture, and then I did my Master's of Architecture. And for my thesis topic, obviously I'm very passionate about healing, so I selected my thesis topic surrounding healing. So the main premise of my thesis was essentially creating creating a healing guideline of principles for people with physical conditions. And I focused in mainly on people aged 20 to 50 years old and helping to bridge that gap that exists between hospital and home. And so I used these healing guidelines and principles that I had curated through research and through studies and investigations that I did, and I applied those to the design of a facility within Detroit, Michigan. And I essentially created this facility where people could go anywhere from 2 weeks to 6 months before they returned home. Because something that I found from my own experience is that that gap between hospital and home is really challenging. And for a lot of people it is because they're experiencing things at home that they would have never thought would have been challenges. Like, you can think about it, even if you just broke your arm and you returned home, there's so many things that you can't do now and that you have to modify. And so having this additional facility is a way to enhance the healing and to make the healing a smoother experience.
Oh my goodness. We need to do this for individuals with mental and physical conditions, because to me, that is everything. Healing has to be connected to like social connection, right?
I mean, environment is huge.
Yeah.
Huge. You just think of the example, it's like people look forward to vacations because they change their environment into relaxing, right? Or think about addiction residential facilities. It's like you're in this really structured facility and then you move out and you go back to a different environment that's very different from what you had, but if there was a transition, it might be easier to move back,
for
right?
sure.
It applies to everything.
It really does. That's why the minute I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing.
Yeah, and I looked at mental health like a lot within my thesis as well, but I targeted it to physical conditions just because I know that there is that link between physical and mental, but I could only study so much in 1 year's time. So I mean, you could apply the same concept that I'm doing to each individual illness or to mental health and then physical health. So there's so many different things, but honestly, healing is something that I'm super passionate about, and as I move forward in my architecture career, I will be working within healthcare design. So I'm super excited about that.
Yay! Yeah. Okay, so before we wrap up, let's all go around and let's talk about, I don't know, I'm trying to, you can tell I'm totally saying this off the top of my head right now. So let's go around and talk about what is your go-to strategy in your toolbox right now during, you know, I know the heat has been a lot, summer. I know that, you know, a lot of people, I keep hearing like, there's no vacation, it's a staycation. So what are your go-to things? What are some, Ewelina?
I think it's just the close people in my life. I just think it's just like being able to go home and see someone that I love and care about, you know, and just being in that comfort zone kind of thing. I think that's what I look forward to most.
Awesome.
Yeah, I look forward to, I'm going to say 2 things. One of the things is me and 2 of my girlfriends who are both entrepreneurs. We have a weekly lunch where we just do a Skype call and we have lunch together, and I really enjoy that because we bounce ideas off of each other and it's just a great way to connect without having to be in person. And I think also just going on walks. I mean, this week it's been a little hard because it's so hot outside, but I really like going on walks, and I feel like it still feels very normal to go on a walk if you're in a park because you don't have to wear a mask and whatnot. So it still feels very normal, and I really love to be outside.
Agreed.
So,
I love going for walks in parks too.
Yeah,
that's awesome. I've been doing journaling, and it's so, I used to do it when I was young, but now I've done kind of like 3 good things, like really trying to start and end my day with kind of 3 things that I'm hopeful for today and what I want to do. And I've been really trying to be kind to myself, practicing a lot more self-compassion and allowing myself to, I can't believe I'm going to say this, but allowing myself to have those nights where you're going to be doing the Netflix and maybe having some ice cream, which I might have done 3 days this week, but that's okay. I'm practicing self-compassion.
The flexibility, right? The flexibility, allowing ourselves to be able to do that. It's just so needed sometimes because
and not feeling guilty. Yeah. And I loved how you said there is such a pressure to be doing various things all the time, nonstop.
If we're not productive, we're not doing anything. But that's so false, right? It's like the opposite. If we do other things, we'll be so much more productive, right?
Well, yeah, and something that I've actually made a mindset shift with this week is looking at rest as productive and productive to your healing, because I've been going through a flare right now, and it's been challenging because I've had to let go of some of the things that I really love doing because I need to take a step back for my own health. And so I've started to look at rest as productive. And it's still hard, and it's still like sometimes difficult to wrap my mind around, but I think that's a good mindset shift that a lot of people can make. And like, yeah, it's just a crazy society that we live in, that we always have to be go, productive. And I honestly feel like COVID has helped a lot of people slow down, because they've slowed down their lives because they don't have all these events to go to, all these things to go to, and they start to realize like, maybe this is better.
Well, I mean, COVID has brought me varying degrees of emotions that I have better vocabulary, right? Yeah. Starting to learn like greater self-awareness. You mentioned, you spoke a lot about getting to know yourself, getting to know what's going on, being an advocate, reading up on what's going on. And I highly, highly encourage that for everyone. Yeah. You are your world's expert when it comes to you. And don't ever let anyone tell you that you're not. Yeah. Right? So, well, I guess we're going to end it there. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. And please don't forget, please visit Nathalie's podcast, her blog, her Instagram page, Gutsy Feeling. And hope to see everyone. Oh, I cut you off.
No, I cut you off. I'm sorry.
Yeah, you did actually.
No,
it wasn't me. It wasn't
you
me.
have a podcast. How many episodes have you recorded? I was just wondering.
I've had, I think, 7 or 8 episodes.
Okay, awesome. Yeah.
It's not as intense as this podcast, but
hey, Media Work Studios is like, they've set us up here.
I do it at my house, me and my mic, and that's about it. But I started that because, if you could tell from this, I really love to talk. So I just found it a great segue.
That's awesome.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
So gutsyfeelings.com?
Yes.
Gutsyfeeling.com. Instagram, Facebook.
Yep. I love how everything is the same. Gutsy Feeling.
Very important.
Don't forget it. Okay. Thank you, and hope to have you tune in a couple of weeks. Peace.